Welcome once more to the old brownstone on West 35th Street, where the orchids bloom 10,000 strong on the roof, where the beer is cold, the chairs are deep, and the greatest detective alive weighs 1/7 of a ton and refuses to leave the house for anything less than perfection. Or murder. Chapter 1. The telegram that refused to be ignored. Close your eyes for a moment and come with me back to a November evening in 1947. The war is 2 years in the grave, but its ghosts still rattle the windows. Outside our old brownstone, the wind is sharp enough to shave with, and inside, the air is thick with the scent of roasting guinea hen, thyme, and 10,000 orchids waiting upstairs under glass. My name, as you know, is Archie Goodwin. I am the man who answers the door when trouble knocks, who carries the gun when Mr. Wolfe decides the world is too uncivilized for his personal appearance, and who, on the night this story begins, was polishing my second glass of milk while Fritz Brenner moved around the kitchen like a priest at high mass. It was Tuesday, the 4th of November, a little after 9. Nero Wolfe had retired to the plant rooms at 8:58 precisely. 2 minutes early, a sure sign the day had bored him senseless. I was alone in the office, feet on the desk, reading the Gazette's racing section and trying to decide whether a horse named Orchid King was an omen or an insult. That was when the front door chimes gave 3 short, impatient stabs. Fritz appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a towel. "Someone is in a hurry, Archie." "Probably another husband who thinks his wife is stepping out with a saxophone player," I said, swinging my feet down. "Tell him we're closed for melancholy." But Fritz was already gliding toward the hall, and I heard the chain slide back, the door open, and then the unmistakable rustle of expensive wet raincoat. 30 seconds later, a Western Union boy stood dripping on the hall rug, holding a yellow envelope as though it might explode. "For Nero Wolfe, Esquire, sign here, and it's COD $4.85, Athens, Greece." I raised an eyebrow that could have sliced bread. Greece. At those rates, the sender was either a millionaire or desperate. I paid the boy, added a $half tip because he looked half frozen, and carried the telegram into the office. The envelope was heavy cream stock, the kind governments use when they want you to feel inferior. I slit it with the letter opener Wolfe keeps for correspondence he intends to ignore. The message was typed in capital letters, the way people do when they are trying not to scream. "Wolfe stop Colonel Reginald Hawthorne. Found shot dead on Corinth Canal Bridge. Stop 3 bullets. Stop no suspects. Stop will pay any fee. Stop come at once. Stop. Major Evelyn Hawthorne, British Legation, Athens." I read it twice, whistled once without meaning to, and headed for the elevator. Soft hum of the elevator cables. The plant rooms at 10 o'clock at night smell like paradise after a rainstorm. 10,000 orchids, Phalaenopsis, Cattleyas, Odontoglossums, glowed under the baby spots. The temperature was a steady 74, the humidity exactly what the gods ordered. In the middle of it all sat Nero Wolfe on his special stool, tweezers in one hand, a blossom of Cattleya hardiana var. Archie Goodwin in the other, gazing at it the way other men gaze at Rita Hayworth. I cleared my throat. He didn't look up. "Archie, if that is another process server, shoot him and bill the estate. It's a telegram from Greece. A Colonel Hawthorne has been murdered. His sister offers any fee and wants you on the next plane." Wolfe placed the orchid back in its clay pot with the reverence a bishop shows the host. "Inform the woman I do not travel, not to Greece, not to New Jersey, not to the end of the hall if Fritz has left the beer in the kitchen." I handed him the yellow sheet anyway. He took it between 2 fingers as though it carried typhoid, read it once, and let it flutter to the workbench like a dead leaf. Pfui. The Corinth Canal is a ditch dug by a bankrupt megalomaniac. I refuse to be dragged across the Atlantic because some retired colonel chose the wrong bridge to be melodramatic on. He reached for another orchid. I waited. I have worked for Nero Wolfe long enough to know the signs. When he is truly indifferent, he insults the client and goes back to his plants. When he is interested, he insults the client twice as hard, and then starts asking questions he pretends are idle. This time, he did neither. He simply stared at the yellow paper as though it had insulted his mother. Finally, he spoke so softly I barely caught it. 3 bullets, he murmured. Someone making very sure. Then louder, Archie, what do we know of a Colonel Reginald Hawthorne? I happen to know plenty. I spend my evenings reading things Wolfe pretends to despise, newspapers mostly. Reginald St. John Hawthorne, DSO and Bar, late Indian Army, commanded the 14th Prince of Wales' own Cinderhorse, until the regiment was disbanded in '34. Northwest frontier legend, held a hill against 2,000 Masuds in '29 with 30 men and a machine gun that jammed. After retirement, he knocked about the Levant doing mysterious things for the Foreign Office. Age 58, unmarried, sister is his only close kin. Major Evelyn Hawthorne, WRNS during the war, now some sort of attaché in Athens. Wolfe's eyes narrowed to slits. Cinderhorse, he repeated. Razmak, 1930. There was unpleasantness. He said no more, but I caught the flicker. Whatever happened at Razmak 17 years ago had just reached across an ocean and tapped Nero Wolfe on the shoulder with a cold, dead finger. Pause 4 seconds. He rose, slowly, ponderously, a mountain deciding to relocate. Archie, ascertain the next available flight to Europe. Then wake Fritz and have him pack my trunk, 24 shirts, the portable beer cooler, and the entire set of Gibbon in the small octavo edition. I blinked. You're going to Greece? I am not, he said grimly. You are going to drag me there. And if this turns out to be a wild goose chase across the wine-dark sea, I shall deduct the entire expense from your salary until you are 93. He paused at the door of the potting room, vast in his yellow silk pajamas. One more thing. Telephone Saul Panzer and tell him to meet us at Idlewild. If I must leave the jurisdiction, I refuse to do it without competent protection. He lumbered toward the elevator. I stood among the orchids a moment longer, listening to the rain against the glass roof, feeling the old familiar tingle that always comes when the game is genuinely afoot. Somewhere in Greece, a man had died on a moonlit bridge with 3 bullets in him, and a 17-year-old secret in his pocket. And Nero Wolfe, who hadn't left the brownstone for pleasure since 1939, was packing for Athens. Soft transitional music, slow Greek bouzouki fading into New York taxi horns. Dear listener, that was how it began, with a yellow envelope, $4.85 postage due, and the stubbornest genius in Manhattan finally agreeing that some murders are worth crossing an ocean for. Close the chapter here if you need to stretch or refill your glass. But when you're ready, Chapter 2 will take us across the Atlantic on a Pan Am clipper down the dizzying chasm of the Corinth Canal and onto a narrow bridge where a dead man still clutches a scrap of khaki that refuses to stay buried. Tell me in the comments, have you ever received a message that changed everything? And what time is it where you are right now as the rain falls on West 35th Street? I'll wait for you on the other side of the ocean. Chapter 2. Across the wine-dark sea. If you have never crossed the Atlantic in a Pan-American clipper just after the war, count yourself lucky. The seats were built for people the size of jockeys. The air tasted of gasoline and terror, and every cloud looked like the one that was finally going to finish us off. Nero Wolfe occupied 4 seats, 2 for himself and 2 for his dignity. He had taken one look at the standard airline meal, something involving cubed carrot and mystery meat, closed his eyes and refused to open them again until we reached the Azores. Saul Panzer, best freelance operative in Manhattan, faced like a mournful bloodhound. sat across the aisle reading a Greek phrase book and pretending he wasn't airsick. I spent the flight alternating between black coffee and trying to keep Wolfe from declaring war on the steward. 34 hours, 3 refueling stops, and 1 near mutiny later, we dropped out of a pearl gray dawn onto the tarmac at Hassani Airport, Athens. The heat hit like the slap of a wet towel. Cicadas were screaming in the olive trees, and the smell, hot pine, diesel, and ancient dust, rolled over us in a wave. A tall woman in khaki skirt and crisp white shirt waited beside a black Humber staff car, flying the Union Jack. Ramrod spine, sun-bleached hair pulled back severely, eyes the color of a Webley barrel. Major Evelyn Hawthorne looked as though she had been carved from teak and tempered in hellfire. "Mr. Wolfe," her voice could have frozen ouzo. "I am Evelyn Hawthorne. My brother is dead, the Greek police are useless, and the Foreign Office would prefer the whole thing disappear. You are my last hope." Wolfe descended the metal staircase as though it were a scaffold. He mopped his brow with a handkerchief the size of a bedsheet. "Madam, I do not perform on tarmacs. Take me somewhere cool, dark, and supplied with cold beer. Then we shall discuss your brother." Sound of car doors slamming, engine starting. The drive into Athens was a fever dream of whitewashed walls, blue domes, and donkeys that refused to recognize right-of-way. Wolfe kept his eyes shut and muttered in ancient Greek whenever we hit a pothole. Saul stared out the window like a man watching his own funeral procession. At the British legation, they had prepared the top-floor suite, high ceilings, marble floors, a balcony overlooking the Acropolis glowing rose gold in the evening light. Fritz Brenner, miracle worker, had somehow arrived ahead of us by cargo plane and was already unpacking the portable beer cooler. Wolfe sank into a reinforced armchair, sighed like a punctured zeppelin, and accepted a tall schooner of fixed beer beaded with frost. Major Hawthorne wasted no time. "My brother was shot at 1:15 on the morning of October 14th on the service bridge at the western end of the Corinth Canal. 3 bullets from a Webley .455, heart and head. He clutched a scrap of khaki with the old regimental badge of the 14th Cinda Horse. 4 people were on the spot within minutes. All claim innocence. The Greek police have arrested no one." Wolfe drank half the schooner in one go. "Names," he said. "Captain Alistair Drummond, my brother's former adjutant, now an importer of dubious reputation. Mrs. Zoe Karamanlis, Greek widow, very rich, very beautiful, very dangerous. Mr. Theodore Vale, American photographer, claims he was taking night pictures for Life magazine. And myself. I followed Reggie because he had been receiving threatening letters." Wolfe's eyes opened fully for the first time since Idlewild. "You followed him, madam, with what intention?" "To protect him, Mr. Wolfe, or if necessary to silence him myself. 17 years ago something happened on the northwest frontier that should have stayed buried. Reggie decided it would not. Someone disagreed, permanently." She laid a manila folder on the table. "Everything the Greek police have. Photographs, ballistics, statements. Read them tonight. Tomorrow, if you're willing, we drive to Corinth. You can stand on the bridge where my brother died and tell me why the past sometimes demands blood instead of interest." Wolfe closed his eyes again. "Archie," he murmured, "inform the major that I shall require dinner first, lamb, not mutton, a second armchair capable of supporting civilization, and absolute silence until 9 tomorrow morning. After that, I shall examine her bridge, her suspects, and her inconvenient corpse." Major Hawthorne actually smiled, a small, hard thing like a cracked diamond. "I was warned you were impossible, Mr. Wolfe. I begin to believe the reports were optimistic." She saluted, crisp military, turned on her heel and left us with the cicadas and the ghosts. Pause 4 seconds. Dear listener, we are now 60 miles west of Athens, standing at the edge of a chasm so deep the water below looks black even at noon. Tomorrow night, Chapter 3 will put us on that narrow bridge under a Greek moon, surrounded by 4 people who all had excellent reasons to kill a man who waited 17 years to be murdered. But before we go there, tell me in the comments, which of the 4 names makes your spine tingle the most? And what time is it where you are as the Clipper's engines finally fall silent? I'll meet you on the bridge when you're ready. Chapter 3. The bridge that remembers. Stand with me now on the little service bridge that spans the Corinth Canal like a careless afterthought. It is barely wide enough for 2 men to pass without touching shoulders. Beneath us, the rock walls drop straight into black water that never sees sunlight. Above, the stars are hard and bright, the kind of stars that watched Agamemnon sail and never blinked once at human folly. It is just past midnight, October the 15th, 1947, one night after Colonel Reginald Hawthorne bled out on these planks. Nero Wolfe, for the only time in my memory, has left the legation willingly. He stands at the center of the bridge wrapped in a vast camel hair coat, scarf up to his ears, looking less like a detective than a disgruntled walrus marooned on a raft. A portable kerosene lantern at his feet throws a circle of trembling gold. Saul Panzer keeps watch at the eastern end. I stand west. Major Evelyn Hawthorne waits on the roadway, face white as chalk. Wolfe hates heights. He hates night air. He hates Greece in principle. Yet here he is because something about 3 bullets and a scrap of khaki has hooked him deeper than any marlin ever hooked a fisherman. He kneels, slowly, ponderously, and runs one gloved finger along the planks where the colonel fell. "Archie," he says without looking up, "the chalk marks." I point to the faint white outlines still visible. Head here, shoulders there, right hand outstretched, clutching nothing now. The body lay on its back, I recite from the police report. Legs toward the northern rail, arms flung wide as if in surprise. The piece of regimental cloth was clenched in the right fist, so tightly they had to break 2 fingers to remove it. Wolfe grunts. He produces a magnifying glass the size of a saucer and studies the wood grain like it owes him money. 3 bullets, he murmurs. 1 to the heart, 2 to the head. Overkill. Passion or panic. Possibly both. He rises with a sigh that could power a small turbine. "Major Hawthorne, oblige me. Walk from the western end to this spot exactly as your brother did last night." Evelyn obeys. Her footsteps ring sharp on the metal grating. Halfway across, she stops. "He paused here," she says, voice low. "He always paused in the middle. Said it reminded him of crossing rope bridges on the frontier. Said it made him feel alive." Wolfe's eyes glitter in the lantern light. "Alive," he repeats, until someone ensured he felt nothing ever again. He turns to me. "Archie, the torch." I hand him the big flashlight. He sweeps the beam slowly along both handrails, then downward into the abyss. "Note the absence of spent cartridges," he says. 3 shots fired at close range, yet no brass on the bridge. The killer policed his leavings, therefore not panic, premeditation. He swings the beam upward. High on the southern rock face, perhaps 30 feet above us, a tiny glint answers back. "There," he says softly. Saul is already moving, scaling the maintenance ladder bolted to the cliff like a fly walking up a wall. 2 minutes later, he descends with something pinched between thumb and forefinger, a single .455 Webley cartridge case, still bright. Wolfe examines it under the glass. "Fired within the last 48 hours. The ejector mark is crisp. Our murderer stood on the upper catwalk, one normally used only by canal pilots, and fired downward. The body fell exactly where the killer intended." He pockets the cartridge with an air of grim satisfaction. "The colonel was lured here to meet someone he trusted enough to turn his back on. Someone who knew he would pause in the center of the bridge, directly beneath the catwalk. Someone who waited 17 years for the perfect spot and the perfect night. Major Hawthorne's voice cuts through the wind like a knife. You are saying my brother was executed. I am saying, madam, that your brother was judged, sentenced, and dispatched with military precision. The question is not who hated him. Clearly several people did, but who possessed the patience of a snake and the memory of an elephant. Wolfe looks upward again into the black throat of the gorge. Tomorrow night, he announces, the 4 of you who were here when the shots were fired will assemble on the legation terrace. Mr. Goodwin will spend the day asking rude questions. By tomorrow midnight, I shall tell you which of you climbed that catwalk with a loaded Webley and settled a debt written in blood across 2 continents and 17 forgotten years. He turns toward the roadway, coat flapping like a sail. Come, Archie. This place depresses me. It smells of salt water and unfinished vendettas. Pause 5 seconds. Only wind and water. Dear listener, we are leaving the bridge now, but the echo of those 3 shots is still traveling down the canyon walls, looking for the one heart that has no right to keep beating. Chapter 4 will follow me into the hot, crooked streets of Athens while Wolfe drinks beer and moves people around in his mind like chess pieces made of guilt. But before the sun rises over the Acropolis, tell me in the comments. When you heard the killer fired from above, did your suspicion shift? Who do you trust least right now? Drummond the debtor, Zoe the widow, young Teddy the photographer, or the sister who followed with secrets of her own? And what time is it where you are as the lantern on that fatal bridge finally goes dark? I'll see you tomorrow night on the terrace, when the past comes back wearing white gloves and carrying 3 bullets that have someone's name on them. Chapter 4. The heat of the day and the weight of the past. While Nero Wolfe remained in the legation suite consuming beer and silence in roughly equal measure, I went hunting. Athens in October is a city that hasn't decided whether to be Europe or the Levant, and the streets twist like a drunk man's memory. I had 4 names, 1 Webley cartridge, and 12 hours before the suspects were due on the terrace. Time to make them sweat harder than the sun was already doing. First stop, the morgue beneath police headquarters on Stadiou Street. The attendant, a mournful Greek with a mustache like a broom, accepted $20 American and led me to drawer number 7. Colonel Reginald Hawthorne lay on the slab looking surprised rather than dead. Eyebrows raised, mouth half open as if the 3rd bullet had interrupted a sentence he never finished. The wounds were neat. 1 center mass, 2 just above the left ear. Execution pattern. I lifted the right hand. The fingers were still bruised purple where they had been prized open to retrieve the scrap of khaki. I took photographs with the little Minox Saul had slipped me, then asked the question that mattered. Was he drunk? The attendant shrugged. Blood alcohol almost 0. The colonel was stone-cold sober when he died. That ruled out the easy theory that someone got him tipsy and pushed him over the rail. He had walked onto that bridge knowing exactly what he was doing. Second stop, Captain Alastair Sandy Drummond's office in Piraeus, a peeling stucco building that smelled of currants and bankruptcy. Drummond was 46 going on 60, face the color of old port, eyes permanently bloodshot. He greeted me with the kind of smile men reserve for process servers. Mr. Goodwin, isn't it? Come to buy raisins wholesale? I've come to ask why you owe £42,000 sterling and why the colonel was threatening to tell the regimental association where the money went. His glass of ouzo stopped halfway to his lips. Reggie was a gentleman, he said at last. He wouldn't. Reggie is dead, I reminded him. Dead men don't keep secrets out of courtesy. Drummond's hand shook. He put the glass down very carefully. Reggie had started writing his memoirs. Certain discrepancies in the regimental accounts during the Razmak operation might have been mentioned. Nothing proven, you understand. Merely inferences. I leaned in. Were you on the bridge last night, Captain? I heard the shots from the cafe below, ran up with the others, found him already gone. He opened a drawer, took out a silver flask, and drank as though it were medicine. Third stop, Mrs. Zoe Karamanlis's villa on the pine-covered slopes of Lycabettus. She received me on a terrace shaded by bougainvillea, wearing black silk that cost more than my annual salary. 35, raven-haired eyes the color of wet slate. You are Wolfe's man, she said without greeting. Ask. Your husband died in 1944, shot 3 times with a Webley .455, same caliber as the colonel. Care to comment? She lit a cigarette with a gold lighter. My husband was collaborating with the Germans. The colonel executed him. I thanked him for it at the time. Grief is complicated, Mr. Goodwin. Did you thank him again on the bridge 2 nights ago? She smiled like a cat who has seen the canary's will. I was there, yes. I heard the shots. I did not fire them. She blew smoke toward the Acropolis. Reggie had begun talking about returning something that did not belong to him. Gold has a way of making men sentimental after 17 years. Fourth stop, Teddy Vale's darkroom in a crumbling Ottoman house near Monastiraki. The air stank of hypo and secrets. Teddy was 29, thin, quick, always moving. Negatives hung from a clothesline like washing. Working late, Mr. Vale? Deadlines, he said, not looking up. Life wants the canal by moonlight. Atmospheric, they said. He had dozens of prints drying. One caught my eye, the bridge at 1:07 a.m., moonlight silver on water. In the lower right corner, almost lost in shadow, the reflection of a figure on the catwalk above, arm raised, unmistakable shape of a heavy revolver. I lifted the print off the line. Funny coincidence, you taking this exact photograph 8 minutes before the colonel was killed. Teddy went very still. I develop what the camera sees, Mr. Goodwin. I don't control the actors. I slipped the print into my pocket. Mr. Wolfe will want to see this at 9 tonight. Be there. As I left, the cicadas sounded like alarm bells. Pause 4 seconds. Dear listener, the sun is dropping behind the mountains now, turning the Saronic Gulf blood red. In a few hours, the 4 of them will climb the legation stairs carrying lies the way other people carry handbags. I have 1 cartridge case, 1 damning negative, 4 people, who were all within 50 yards of a dead man, and 17 years of buried gold that refuses to stay buried. Chapter 5 will bring us to the roof terrace where Nero Wolfe, fat, brilliant, and thoroughly out of temper, will begin moving human chess pieces toward checkmate. But before the bouzouki starts up again, tell me in the comments, which of today's visits made you catch your breath, and whose alibi is already cracking like old plaster? Chapter 5. The terrace at 9 o'clock sharp. The legation roof terrace has been cleared of diplomats and ginslings. Only 6 people remain under the lantern light. Nero Wolfe, enthroned in a reinforced wicker chair that groans like a ship in a storm. Saul Panzer, silent shadow by the stairwell. Myself, notebook open, .38 loose in the shoulder rig. And the 4 who were on the bridge when the colonel stopped breathing. Major Evelyn Hawthorne stands at parade rest, gloved hands clasped behind her back. Captain Alistair Drummond sweats ouzo in fear, eyes darting like trapped flies. Mrs. Zoe Karamanlis sits very straight, cigarette glowing between black lacquered fingers. Teddy Vale leans against the balustrade, camera around his neck like a tourist who wandered into the wrong century. A single photograph, Vale's moonlight shot, lies face up on the table beside the Webley cartridge Saul found on the catwalk. Wolfe's eyes are half closed, but I have seen that look before. A lion pretending to sleep while the antelope argue about who gets eaten first. Wolfe speaks first, voice soft, almost lazy. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here to determine which of you climbed the catwalk above the service bridge and fired 3 measured shots into Colonel Reginald Hawthorne. The motive is old, 17 years old, but the execution was meticulous. I dislike meticulous murderers. They offend my sense of proportion. He raises one vast hand. Let us begin with the simplest truth. The colonel was not robbed. He was punished. 3 bullets, 1 for the heart, personal, 2 for the head, final. Someone wished to be certain the past could never speak again. He turns the photograph so all can see the reflected figure on the catwalk. Mr. Vale, you told Mr. Goodwin this was coincidence. Coincidence is a luxury I do not permit in homicide. Teddy opens his mouth, closes it, tries a smile that dies halfway. Wolfe continues. Captain Drummond, you embezzled regimental funds in 1930 and have been embezzling ever since. The colonel intended to expose you, that is motive. Drummond starts to bluster. Wolfe silences him with a look that could freeze mercury. Mrs. Caramanlis, you believed the colonel murdered your husband. You possess or possessed a Webley 455 registered to that same husband. Motive again. Zoe exhales smoke toward the stars, unmoved. Major Hawthorne, Wolfe says gently. You followed your brother to protect him or to silence him before he destroyed the family name and your own secret. Motive thrice. Evelyn's chin lifts a fraction. Do get on with it, Mr. Wolfe. Wolfe leans forward. The wicker creaks ominously. Very well. The killer fired from above, ejected 3 cartridges, and descended before the echoes died. Yet no brass was found on the bridge itself. The killer collected the cases, careful, professional. Except one. One cartridge rolled into a crack on the catwalk and was missed in the dark. He places the single bright case on the table. It spins, glinting. This is the murderer's calling card. Silence stretches until the cicadas sound like artillery. Wolfe's voice drops to a murmur. Archie, the gloves. I step forward and lay 4 pairs of gloves on the table, taken from their rooms that afternoon. Drummond's brown leather driving gloves, Zoe's black kid evening gloves, Teddy's thin cotton photographer's gloves, and Evelyn Hawthorne's white dress gloves, immaculate, military issue, the kind worn with mess dress. Wolfe picks up the white pair. Observe the right index finger, a microscopic burn, fresh. Powder residue transferred when the ejector port kissed the glove as the 3rd cartridge was flung clear. Evelyn does not flinch. Wolfe's eyes open fully now, dark and terrible. Major Hawthorne, you shot your brother. Once for the 12 dead troopers at Razmak, once for the gold you both pretended never existed. Once so the past would finally be quiet. For a long moment, no one breathes. Then Evelyn Hawthorne reaches into her handbag and places the old Webley beside the cartridge case. The click of it touching marble is the loudest sound in Greece tonight. I waited 17 years for the right bridge, she says, calm as winter. He chose it himself. Said it reminded him of the rope bridges on the frontier. I thought that fitting. Drummond makes a small, broken sound and slides to the tiles in a dead faint. Zoe Caramanlis stubs her cigarette out very deliberately. Teddy Vale's camera slips from his fingers and clatters like a gunshot. Wolfe sighs, an exhalation large enough to stir the jasmine. Archie, telephone the Greek police and tell Fritz we sail tomorrow. I have seen quite enough of foreign justice. Long pause. Only the wind and the city far below. Dear listener, the terrace is emptying now. A sister is led away in handcuffs, white gloves still spotless except for one tiny burn no one will ever see again. Somewhere down in the canal, the black water keeps moving, carrying the colonel's secrets toward the sea. Chapter 6, the short bitter epilogue, will take us home across another restless ocean back to the brownstone where the orchids never ask questions and the beer is always cold. But before we leave Greece behind, tell me in the comments, did the white gloves surprise you, or had you felt the chill of them all along? I'll meet you on the Clipper at dawn. Chapter 6 Homeward with echoes 3 weeks later, and the old brownstone on West 35th Street smells exactly the way God intended a house to smell in December. Roasting chestnuts from the vendor on the corner, pine logs crackling in the office fireplace, and 10,000 orchids breathing warm, sweet air down from the plant rooms. We are home. The Pan Am Clipper carried us as far as Lisbon. A lumbering Liberty ship named SS Elpenor did the rest. Nero Wolfe spent the entire voyage in a deck chair the size of a small garage, wrapped in blankets, reading Thucydides aloud to the indifferent ocean and complaining that the salt air was ruining his palate. I spent it on the rail, watching the wake curl away behind us like a long white scar, wondering whether some murders ever truly end when the handcuffs click shut. Major Evelyn Hawthorne faced a Greek military court in early November. The charge was murder. The verdict was manslaughter with extenuating circumstances. Sentence: 5 years. She is at this moment somewhere on the island of Aegina teaching Shakespeare in decent posture to the wives of admirals. The white gloves were entered as People's Exhibit A and now rest in an evidence locker beside the Webley that once belonged to Zoe Karamanlis's late husband. The gold, 20 lakh rupees melted down and recast into anonymous bars, was never found. Some say the Masood tribesmen got it after all back in 1930. Some say it financed Drummond's current empire until he drank it away. I like to think it's still buried under the ruins of Razmak Fort waiting for the next dishonest Englishman with a map and a guilty conscience. Captain Drummond vanished 2 days after the terrace confrontation. Last seen boarding a cake bound for Beirut with one suitcase and the expression of a man who knows the hangman is measuring rope in his size. Zoe Karamanlis sent Wolfe a case of 1928 Krug and a brief note. Thank you for proving that some widows prefer justice to revenge. ZK. Wolfe drank 1 bottle, declared it tolerable, and gave the rest to Fritz for cooking. Teddy Vale sold his canal photographs to Life after all. The magazine ran them under the title Moonlight on Ancient Waters. The one damning negative, the reflection of the catwalk killer, mysteriously disappeared from his files the night before publication. Teddy never mentioned it again. And Nero Wolfe? He has not spoken of Greece since the morning we tied up at Pier 90, not once. Until tonight. Fire crackles softly. It is the 23rd of December. Fritz has just carried in the guinea hens glazed with orange and Grand Marnier. Wolfe sits at the dining room table, napkin tucked under his chin, eyes half closed in anticipation. I pour the wine, a 29 Latour that cost more than most people earn in a month, and wait for the ritual complaint about the cork. Instead, he looks up, fork poised. Archie? Yes, sir. That bridge at Corinth, did you notice how narrow it was? I noticed. A man could stand in the exact center and feel the entire world fall away beneath him. Rather like life, wouldn't you say? I open my mouth, close it again. Philosophy from Nero Wolfe is rarer than an honest politician. He cuts a precise bite of guinea hen, chews, nods approval to Fritz, then continues as though thinking aloud. Major Hawthorne believed 3 bullets could balance 17 years of silence. She was wrong. The past is never solvent. It merely changes interest rates. He reaches for the wine, sips, sets the glass down with care. Confine our future murders to the 5 boroughs, Archie. The food is superior, the beer is colder, and the bridges, when one must cross them, are wide enough for 2 consciences to pass without touching. I grin. Yes, sir? He returns to his plate. The subject is closed. Grease is filed away with the other finished cases, somewhere between the silent speaker and the Black Mountain, never to be reopened unless another yellow telegram arrives from a place with bad cooking and worse memories. Soft clink of a bottle being opened. Outside, snow has begun to fall on West 35th Street. Fat, lazy flakes that settle on the stoop like forgiveness. Inside, Fritz brings in the chestnut soufflé. The fire settles into comfortable embers, and the orchids upstairs keep their own counsel. Dear listener, that is the end of our Greek adventure. A colonel who died on a moonlit bridge, a sister who paid the oldest debt in the world, and a detective who crossed an ocean against every instinct simply because some murders refused to stay on the far side of the wine-dark sea. If you walk the whole distance with us, from the brownstone to the Corinth Canal and back again, do me one small favor before you turn out the light. Hit that like button so the algorithm knows these old-fashioned mysteries still matter. Subscribe if you want more nights like this, orchids, gunfire, and the comfortable certainty that justice, however tardy, sometimes wears the right pair of gloves. And tell me in the comments, what should our next case be? A body in a Broadway orchestra pit? A locked stateroom on the Queen Mary? Or something darker out on the windswept dunes of Long Island? This is Archie Goodwin signing off from the best room in the best house in the best city on earth. Good night. Keep your doors locked, and your bridges narrow enough for truth to cross alone. Chapter 7. The Telegram That Came Back. It is now the 3rd of January, 1948. The holidays are gone, the tree is down, and the city is wrapped in the kind of cold that makes brass monkeys sing soprano. Nero Wolfe has just retired to the plant rooms after a dinner of shad roe soufflé and 3 bottles of Remoissanne that cost more than a new Chevrolet. Fritz is humming in the kitchen, polishing silver like a man polishing memories. I am alone in the office, feet on the desk, finishing the last of the eggnog and wondering whether the Giants have a prayer next season. The front door chimes give 3 short, peremptory jabs. At 11:30 on a night when sensible people are asleep, that can only mean one thing: trouble wearing a Western Union cap. I open the door. The boy is the same half-frozen kid who delivered the first telegram 2 months ago. He looks older now, as though the Atlantic has rubbed a few years onto him. Mr. Goodwin? Sign here. COD $5.90, Athens again. I pay. Tip him $1 because the snow is coming sideways and carry the envelope to the desk. Same heavy cream stock, same capital letters that look like they were hammered out with anger. Wolf stop gold found, stop Razmak. Fort collapsed in flood. Stop 20 bars in lead coffin marked 14th Cinda horse. Stop Evelyn escaped, Aegina prison, stop believed en route New York. Stop she knows you have the negative, stop she still has the Webley. Stop for God's sake, come stop. Zoe Karamanlis, Athens. I read it twice, feel the old tingle crawl up my spine like ice water and head for the elevator. Soft elevator hum. The plant rooms are dark except for the low night lights among the orchids. Wolf stands at the far end of the intermediate room motionless, gazing at a bench of new Paphiopedilums as though they have personally offended him. I clear my throat. He doesn't turn. Archie, if that is another bill from the steamship company, burn it. It's a telegram from Zoe Karamanlis. The gold has surfaced. Major Hawthorne has escaped. She's coming here, with the gun. I hand him the yellow sheet. He reads it once, slowly. His lips move, shaping words I cannot hear. Then, very deliberately, he folds the paper into a perfect square and places it in the wastebasket. Archie. Yes, sir. Telephone Idlewild. Secure 2 seats on the earliest flight to London, then onward passage to Karachi or Peshawar, whatever is fastest. Tell Saul and Fred and Ori to pack for mountains and heat. Inform Fritz we will need the large picnic hamper and the portable refrigerator. He turns at last. In the dim green light, his face is granite. Major Hawthorne believes she has unfinished business. She is mistaken. The business was finished the moment she pulled that trigger on the bridge, but some lessons must be repeated. I stare at him. You're going to the northwest frontier. I am not, he says grimly. You are going to drag me there. Again. He pauses at the door, vast silhouette against the glow of the orchids. One more thing. Find Theodore Vale. He still possesses the original negative of the catwalk killer. Tell him if he wishes to remain alive and prosperous, he will deliver it to this house before sunrise. Unexposed. He starts down the stairs, voice floating back like distant thunder. And Archie, pack my heavy coat. I have a premonition the Khyber Pass in January will be less accommodating than Athens in October. Pause 5 seconds. Only the wind and the ticking clock. Dear listener, the brownstone is suddenly too small for what is coming. 17 years ago, 12 men and one disguised woman rode into Razmak Gorge with a fortune in gold and never came out the same. Now the gold has come out without them, and the woman is coming for the last living witness who can hang her twice. Once for murder, once for treason. The Webley still has 3 rounds left, or maybe she has reloaded. Either way, the bridge at Corinth was only the overture. The real performance is about to begin 3,000 miles from saltwater, in a ruined fort where the wind sounds like ghosts arguing over buried treasure. Chapter 8. If there is mercy in heaven, will find us on the road to Peshawar, chasing a woman in white gloves who has decided that some debts are paid only when the creditor is in the grave beside the debtor. But before we leave the brownstone again, perhaps for the last time, tell me in the comments, are you ready to cross the roof of the world with a 1/7 of a ton genius who hates travel more than he hates being wrong? Because the game, my friends, is most definitely afoot again. And this time the stakes are measured in gold bars and human lives. I'll meet you at the airport when the snow stops. Or maybe on the far side of the Khyber, where the past is waiting with a loaded Webley and a 17-year smile. Chapter 8. The Road to Razmak. If you ever want to understand why Nero Wolfe refuses to leave Manhattan, book him on a Boak Dakota from Karachi to Peshawar in January, then change to a Royal Indian Air Force C-47 that smells of curry and cordite, and finally cram him into a 1938 Ford V8 lorry for the last 70 miles of hairpin bends up the Khyber Pass. He has not spoken in 12 hours except to say "Phooey" and "Close that damned window, Archie." It is now the 17th of January, 1948. India is 8 months away from partition, the frontier is boiling, and every tribal Lashkar between here and Afghanistan has heard that British gold has risen from the grave. We are 6 in the lorry, Wolfe wedged across the entire back seat like a sullen Buddha. Saul Panzer beside me up front nursing a Sten gun, Fritz in the rear with the picnic hamper strapped down as though it contains the crown jewels, and 2 very nervous Pathan drivers who keep looking at Wolfe as if he might explode. The road is a crumbling ledge blasted out of living rock. Below us, the valley drops 1,000 feet into mist. Above us, the peaks are white and merciless. At Malacan Pass, we are stopped by a British captain barely old enough to shave. "Turn round, sir. Razmak Fort is under tribal siege, Massoud snipers on every ridge, no civilian gets through." Wolfe opens one eye. "Young man, I am no civilian. I am the reckoning." The captain takes one look at Wolfe's face, another at the diplomatic passport I wave, and stands aside. By dusk, we reach the ruins of Razmak Fort. Broken walls, collapsed watchtowers, and a fresh landslide that has split the old parade ground like a cracked plate. In the center of the chaos stands a lead-lined coffin the size of a small piano, stenciled in faded white. Property 14th Prince of Wales's own Cinda horse, 1930. 20 gold bars glint inside, each stamped with the crown and cipher of George V, and waiting beside it, calm as winter, is Major Evelyn Hawthorne. She has cut her hair short, traded the skirt for Pathan shalwar kameez and bandolier, but the eyes are the same, steel under ice. A Webley hangs at her hip. A Lee Enfield rifle leans against the coffin. She raises a gloved hand, still white, still immaculate. "Mr. Wolfe, you are punctual. I thought you might be." Wolfe heaves himself down from the lorry with the dignity of an ocean liner docking. "Madam, you have committed escape, theft, and trespass across 3 jurisdictions. Your career in crime is ambitious." Evelyn smiles without warmth. "The gold never belonged to the crown. It belonged to the 12 dead men my brother betrayed. I promised their widows 17 years ago that one day it would come home. Today it does." She gestures and 20 Massoud tribesmen rise from the rocks like ghosts materializing. Every rifle is pointed at us. Saul's Sten comes up an inch. I shake my head. We are outgunned 30-1. Wolfe does not even glance at the tribesman. "You require the negative," he says quietly. "The photograph that proves you fired from the catwalk. Mr. Vale surrendered it to me in New York. It is in my pocket." He produces a glass plate envelope, holds it to the setting sun so the image is visible. Evelyn on the catwalk, Webley raised, moonlight on white gloves. "Destroy me," she says, "and the tribesmen destroy you. Hand it over and you leave with your lives." Wolfe's voice is softer than the wind. "Archie, I know what is coming. I have seen that tone before." He crushes the glass plate in one vast fist. Shards fall like ice. "Your proof is gone," he says. "The gold is yours. Take it and vanish. The British will not chase you into tribal territory. They have larger wars brewing. But understand this. The moment you fire that Webley again, I will find you wherever you hide, and I will not be gentle." For a long moment, the only sound is the wind keening through the broken fort. Evelyn studies Wolfe the way a chess player studies an unexpected move. Then she nods once, sharp, military. "Done," she signals. The tribesmen lower their rifles. She lifts the first gold bar, weighs it in her gloved hand. "For widow Bibi Khan," she says. "For widow Fatima. For all of them." One by one, the bars disappear into saddlebags. When the coffin is empty, she salutes. Crisp, perfect, heartbreaking. "Tell the world the 14th Cinder Horse settled its accounts." She turns, mounts a waiting horse, and within minutes the Mahsouds are gone. Gold, woman, and ghosts riding into the darkening. Tuoma passes. Wolfe watches until the last rider vanishes. Then he sighs, a sound large enough to start a small avalanche. "Come, Archie. The air here is thin and the company worse. Fritz has cold pheasant and a tolerable Chateau d'Yquem. We have earned them." Pause 5 seconds. Only wind across ruined walls. Dear listener, we never saw Evelyn Hawthorne again. Some say she bought a village in the Tira with the gold and lived out her days teaching English to tribesmen's daughters. Some say the Mahsouds killed her the first winter for being a woman who gave orders. I prefer the first version. The negative was, of course, a duplicate. The real one is locked in Wolfe's safe, labeled simply Razmak, 1930. He has never opened it. And Nero Wolfe has never left New York again. Not once, not for any fee, not even when the president himself telephoned. Some bridges once crossed are best burned behind you. Chapter 9. The Negative That Refused to Die. 5 years have passed since the dust of Razmak settled back over the gold and the woman in white gloves. Nero Wolfe is heavier, richer, and if possible, even less inclined to leave the brownstone. I am 38, still answering the door, still pouring the beer, still pretending I do not notice the gray at my temples. Tonight the house is quiet. Fritz has gone to bed. Wolfe is upstairs coaxing a new hybrid odontoglossum toward its first bloom under the grow lights. I am alone in the office finishing the accounts when the front door chimes give one measured ring, not urgent, not timid, simply inevitable. I open the door. A boy, No, a young man now, stands on the stoop. Theodore Vale, thinner, sunburned, the eyes of someone who has photographed too many wars and too few weddings. He holds a flat manila envelope. "Archie," he says, voice rough from desert dust and cheap cigarettes. "I need 5 minutes with Mr. Wolfe. After that, you can throw me out or call the cops. Your choice." I look at the envelope. It is addressed in neat military handwriting. To Nero Wolfe, Esquirmer. Personal and urgent. From the estate of Major E. St. J. Hawthorne, deceased. I take him upstairs. Wolfe is seated on the high stool in the potting room, tweezers poised over a blossom the color of fresh blood. He does not turn. "Archie, if that is another photographer selling pictures of orchids, tell him the price is his soul and I already own it." "It's Teddy Vale, sir. He has something from Major Hawthorne." The tweezers freeze mid-air. Wolfe lays them down with the reverence most men reserve for loaded revolvers. "Show him in." Teddy steps into the light of the plant room lamps. He looks smaller here among the green leaves and glass. He opens the envelope and slides out 2 things. First, a single glass plate negative, the twin of the one Wolfe crushed at Razmak. Second, a letter on prison stationery dated 3 months ago. Wolfe takes the letter, adjusts his reading glasses, and reads, aloud in a voice suddenly old. "To Nero Wolfe, who crossed 2 oceans to prove I was a murderer and then gave me back my honor anyway. The doctors say the malaria has won. By the time you read this, I will be with the regiment again, permanently. The negative you destroyed was a copy. This is the original. Do with it as you think just. I never thanked you for letting me ride away with the gold. The widows received their shares. The regiment's name is clean in the villages that matter. If there is justice beyond the grave, I hope mine weighs less than 20 bars. Evelyn St. John Hawthorne, H.M. Prison. Aegina Wolfe folds the letter with great care and places it on the bench beside the negative. Teddy clears his throat. She sent it to me in Beirut, asked me to deliver it personally, said only you would know what to do with it. Wolfe stares at the glass plate for a long time. In the strong light, the image is merciless. A woman on a catwalk, white gloves, revolver raised, moonlight on a face carved from duty and grief. At last he speaks, so softly the orchids seem to lean in. "Archie, the matches." I hand him the box we use for sterilizing tools. He strikes one. The flame trembles, then steadies. He holds the corner of the negative over the sink. Major Hawthorne believes some truth should die with their owners. I am inclined, for once, to agree. The glass blackens, curls, drops into the porcelain with a tiny hiss. The last image of the catwalk killer is gone forever. Wolfe turns to Teddy. "You have discharged your obligation. Go in peace. And Mr. Vale, next time you photograph a war, try to be on the side that wins." Teddy hesitates, then offers his hand. Wolfe takes it, an event rarer than a blue moon. The young man leaves without another word. The front door closes softly behind him. Wolfe stands motionless among the orchids for a full minute. Then he picks up the letter again, smooths it, and slips it between the pages of a heavy catalog labeled Catalia 1953. He clears his throat. "Archie." "Yes, sir?" "Tomorrow morning you will place a notice in the Gazette personal column. ESJH, debt acknowledged and cancelled. Rest easy. NW. She will see it wherever she is." He returns to his orchid, voice almost inaudible. "And close the safe. Some ghosts have earned their silence." Long pause, only the soft ticking of the plant room clock and the distant hum of New York traffic. Dear listener, that was the true ending. Quiet, private, final. No more telegrams from Athens. No more white gloves on moonlit bridges. Only a small pile of ash in a sink, A letter tucked among flowers and two men who understood that justice sometimes wears a different face than law. The brownstone sleeps again tonight, warm and inviolable. The orchids bloom on, innocent of everything except perfection. And somewhere, perhaps on a Greek island, perhaps under frontier stars, a soldier keeps her final watch without need of a revolver. Good night. Lock your doors if you must, but leave one small window open for mercy. Chapter 10. The orchids remember time that most relentless of clients has finally collected its fee. Nero Wolfe died this morning peacefully in the plant room, seated on his special stool, a perfect bloom of Cattleya Archie Goodwin Goodwini in his hand. No drama, no gunshot, no last yellow telegram. Just a small sigh, a sudden weight, and the greatest detective mind of the century slipped away at the exact moment his newest hybrid opened its first lip. The doctor says heart. I say orchids. He had finished what he came here to do. I am 58 years old tonight, sitting alone at the big desk for the first time in 34 years. Fritz is in the kitchen crying into the soufflé. Saul Panzer sits across from me, hat in his lap, eyes red but steady. The brownstone feels hollow, as though the walls themselves are holding their breath. On the blotter lies a single envelope, delivered by hand this afternoon. No stamp, no return address, only two words in a firm military hand. For Archie E. Inside are three things. First, a small photograph. A Greek island village, white houses, blue sea, an old woman in black standing beside a schoolyard full of dark-eyed children. On the back, in fountain pen ink, they learn English, mathematics, and never to betray a comrade. The regiment lives on. Thank you for the silence. Evelyn St. J. Hawthorne, 1966. Second, a pressed flower, tiny, dried, still faintly purple. A slip of paper tucked beneath it reads, "From the cliff above the Corinth Canal." It grows where the lantern fell that night. I thought you should know the bridge remembers gentler things now. Third, a single 455 Webley cartridge, bright, unfired, polished like silver. Wrapped around it is the last note, shorter than the others. This bullet was never needed after all. Bury it with him, please. Some debts are paid by never being fired. I read them twice, 3 times, then fold everything back into the envelope and lock it in the small top drawer where Wolfe kept things he never wanted discussed. Saul watches me without speaking. I open the safe, the big globe Wernicke that has not been touched since 1953. Inside, exactly where he left it, is the catalog marked Cattleya, 1953. Between pages 142 and 143 lies the letter from Aegina prison, now yellowed and fragile. I carry it upstairs. The plant rooms are warm and fragrant, lit only by the low night lights. 10,000 orchids stand in perfect ranks, silent witnesses. Wolfe's body has been taken away, but his stool is still there, pushed back exactly 4 inches from the bench, the way he always left it when a bloom satisfied him. I place the Aegean flower on the bench, lay the bright cartridge beside it, and open the catalog. The prison letter flutters out like a tired moth. I read the last line again. If there is justice beyond the grave, I hope mine weighs less than 20 bars. I smile, because I know the answer now. I take the matchbox, the same one we used in 1953, strike a light and hold the corner of the letter over the sink. The paper catches, curls, becomes ash in memory. When the last ember dies, I scatter the ashes into the drainage tray beneath the odontoglossums. Let the orchids have it. They always understood silence better than people. Downstairs, the office clock strikes 10. I pour 2 glasses of Remoisonnet 29, the last bottle from the case Zoe Karamanlis sent 20 years ago. I set one on the desk in front of Wolfe's empty chair. Saul raises his glass without being asked. 2 absent friends, he says. To debts canceled, I answer. We drink. Outside, the cherry blossoms keep falling soft as forgiveness. Dear listener, that is the real final chapter. No more telegrams, no more bridges, no more white gloves in the dark. Only a quiet brownstone, 10,000 orchids that will outlive us all. And the certain knowledge that somewhere a regiment of children is learning to read under a Mediterranean sun because two stubborn people, one vast, one ramrod straight, decided that justice can sometimes be measured in mercy instead of bullets. I will keep the office open a little longer. Fritz will keep cooking. The orchids will keep blooming. And every April, when the cherry blossoms drift past the windows like slow pink snow, I will pour 2 glasses of wine, set one in front of an empty chair, and remember that some stories do not end with a bang, but with a single perfect flower opening in a dead man's hand. Good night, dear listener. Lock the door if you wish, but leave the window open. The orchids like the air.